The second act begins with the TARDIS landing in the capital building of the city of Kaalann. Before we get into the cutscene though, let's look at this establishing shot first. The zoom in on this building would seem to suggest that it's the exterior of where the TARDIS lands, and at first glance that seems fine. You can see the massive dome shape of the council chamber from later in the game, although the shape of the windows isn't quite consistent with the view from the inside, but that doesn't matter. The problem is, if you look out any windows at the cityscape of Kaalann, you can actually see the building you're supposed to be standing in far off in the distance, because this establishing shot is of the same skyline that gets used for the view out those windows. So either this building should not be visible from here, or this isn't actually where the TARDIS landed and it's the establishing shot that's misleading. But considering how closely you have to scrutinize the view out the window to even recognize the building from the establishing shot, this is a complete non-issue and more like interesting trivia than an actual criticism. What you're more likely to notice first is that the skyline actually loops, and you can see the same handful of buildings out the window from any direction. Now, the elephant in the room here is Skaro. The history of Skaro in Doctor Who lore is a complete mess of broken continuity at the best of times, to the point where doing anything at all with it will inevitably create contradictions. When this game was released in 2010, the last we'd seen of Skaro had been the entire planet getting totally destroyed at the end of the classic series, as part of arguably the first blow of what would become the Time War. Hostilities between the Daleks and the Time Lords have been gradually ramping up over the course of the classic series, with progressively more explicit acts of hostility. The Time Lords tried and failed to sneakily erase the Daleks by interfering with the course of events that led to their creation, and the Daleks were at one point planning to assassinate members of Gallifrey's High Council. Davros had just been openly declaring his intentions to conquer Gallifrey moments before the Doctor struck first, so the destruction of Skaro is easy to point to as the culmination of these tensions and the point of no return for the war. But now, Skaro's back again. What City of the Daleks seems to be implying is that Skaro was rendered uninhabitable, but the ruins were still physically there for the Daleks to eventually come back to. It doesn't really track with how it was literally obliterated in the classic series. The sun actually went supernova, but it's kind of splitting the difference between acknowledging Skaro's destruction and retconning it back to life. But putting aside Skaro's mere existence, why is it suddenly back to its former glory after being abandoned for so long? Well, it's not made clear in the game, but the script editor Gary Russell suggested in an interview that this is where the group from Victory of the Daleks went to when they escaped. In that episode, one of the Daleks says this: "We shall return to our own time and begin again." The line is vague, but it does fit in nicely.